And we'll give Michael a moment to dial in. And we are on day number 16 on the Enlightenment Study. I hope that you're following along. If you have one of the Enlightenment books, Michael is actually telling us what page he's on, and as he's discussing it, reading it, explaining it. And if you don't have an Enlightenment book and you would like to get it, if you order it on our website, it's going to automatically charge you $9 shipping and handling. But if you just go and make a donation of $26, the extra dollar covers the fee that PayPal charges us. The book is for $25, and we will pay the shipping. When you make the donation, be sure and put that it is for the Enlightenment book and give us your name and address where to mail it, and we will get it off to you the very next day. Several people have ordered it or already had one, or they had attended a live workshop or intensive, and so we hope that you are following along, and Michael has joined us. So I'm going to say welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted that you're here, honored that you're here to be part of this conversation, to extend this energy, even if in no other way than through your brain, receiving it to your neck of the woods, wherever you are in the world. You know, there's an interesting dynamic. If you do some research on people patenting inventions, it's interesting that you'll find something that is totally, completely unique, but has been patented by 2 or 3 different people in totally different parts of the world, and people with no connection to each other. And they all patented their invention on the same day or within days of each other. What that says is that we live in a world of energy. And when you recognize that we live in a world of energy, engaging in, entertaining in energy means that you intensify it, you amplify it. You know, one of the understandings when we're talking about the Kabor's manuscript and the Enlightenment book that we're working with, we hear this master teacher from 2,000 years ago saying, a little leavening leavens the whole loaf. And one might be tempted to think that he's talking about bread. But in fact, this is a physicist speaking, talking about physics, critical mass. And that when an energy is intensified sufficiently within a given energy field, everything in that energy field is transformed by that one little piece of increased intensity. And so literally, you know, if you're in England, if you're in Russia, if you're in Yugoslavia, wherever you are, if you're simply hearing these words, then your energy is a contribution that is assisting in creating a critical mass. And that's what we're looking to do with this work, is to take these teachings based in the fact that we as human beings are literally the active presence of love. It's been forgotten. It's been lost in the world. And few people can even conceive of that as a possibility because their fields are filled with such intensity of trauma and drama and pain. And yet, and we see it all the time, people who run into this work and go, oh, come on now, that's not really possible. And then, picking up the tools and doing the work, people who've lived, and I'm talking about, I mean, suicide-level trauma. I mean, we often hear from people who've been on the verge of suicide, who've picked up these tools, and a very short time later, we're hearing from them saying, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't kill myself. I'm just so delighted to be alive. People recognize that the drama and trauma world is something that's just a product of energetic patterns being held within their structure, generations and generations of patterning. And we're here to support people in undoing that patterning, discovering themselves as the presence of love and bringing that active presence of love into the world. This is what Yeshua was referring to when he said, a little leavening leavens the whole loaf. When enough people will join in bringing forward the literal true presence of who we are as human beings, then hitting critical mass, that energy, that insight, that experience becomes available to people who've never even conceived of human life being about love. And so that's what we're here to support. That's what we're here to produce. And this, if you're following along in the manuscript on page 20, about the middle of the page, and the Course talks about, or the Kabbalists delivers words expressing higher law. This is the higher law we're talking about, this critical mass, that the higher the frequency is in the energy field, the more powerful and the more penetrating it is. If I'm closed in a room and I have a flashlight and I shine the flashlight against the wall, I'm in one room right now and there's a wall between Jeannie and I. If I shine a flashlight on the wall, Jeannie has no idea I'm shining that flashlight, because to the light that's leaving this flashlight, the wall is solid. The wall absorbs all of the energy of that light. None of it comes out on the other side. But if I were to project a radio wave against the exact same spot on the wall, and Jeannie had a radio receiver on the other side, then Jeannie would receive that frequency. She'd receive that radio signal. If I were to put 1/8 of an inch of lead on that wall, that radio signal would no longer get through. What would happen? The density of the lead is so intense that every bit of energy of that radio wave is absorbed by the atomic structure of the lead. None of it gets through to the other side. So you'll notice as we raise in frequency, matter becomes more and more transparent. So if I were to put that 1/8 of an inch of lead on the wall, Jeannie would not receive the light, nor the radio wave, nor the X-ray. But if I went to a gamma ray and she had a gamma ray detector on the other side, she'd receive the gamma ray, because again, the gamma ray is still a finer energy. There's not enough interaction or resonance with the atomic structure of the lead, and the gamma ray passes right through the lead. There is nothing we know of in what's called the material universe that can stop the high energy wave that leaves the mind when we think a thought. Now, so many people have joined with others, and it's mainly because of brainwashing, programming that comes in childhood, programming that comes in our genes, and the traumas experienced, and people join in this drama and trauma and pain and rage and fear, even coming to the crazy belief that love means I'm going to be abused. Now I know you love me because you're abusing me, just like my power person did. And my power person said, I'm only abusing you because I love you. I'm only beating on you because I want you to be good, and I love you. And this mistake that love is something we can do to each other rather than a state of being leaves many minds locked into all kinds of craziness, which then joining with others seems like, and we watch millions of people being brainwashed into these frequencies of pain, and I mean literally brainwashed. There's a test that we often invite people to do, and that is to sit down at their television set, have a piece of paper, and draw a 1-inch margin on the left-hand side of the page. And then, spending no more than maybe 2 minutes on any given station on their television set, just to switch, every 2 minutes, switch frequencies, switch in, signals, go from channel to channel to channel to channel to channel on their TV set. And then on the left-hand side of the page where you've got that 1 inch margin, make a check mark. Every time you hear a word that truly represents the active presence of love as human life. And then put a check mark for every time you hear a word that's based in hostility or fear. And notice, you'll fill 100 pages with check marks about hostility or fear before you'll fill one inch column with hearing on this public media words that actually represent the presence of active love as we are designed to experience it. So there is a brainwash, an energetic brainwash that's taken over the world, and it's the higher law as the Khaburis presents it, as the Enlightenment book, as our conversation is about, understanding that when we engage in this higher law, it is literally a frequency that will penetrate all space and all time and become available to all humans on the planet. That's physics. All we need is the leavening. All we need is enough people who will understand that and choose to forgive. And remember that forgiveness doesn't mean I let you off the hook because this rage or fear or pain is moving in me. Forgiveness is a tool with which I remove my rage or pain or fear. And so when I begin to work with removing the brainwash, all the words based in hostility or fear, you remember this man Yeshua 2,000 years ago who understood the higher law, said the power of life and death is in your words. Look at that piece of paper where you put check marks on the page. Which column, the 1 inch column where you put a check mark for every time you heard something about actual human life, about love, or the words based in hostility, which ones do you suppose represent human life? And what's the preponderance of words that you use on a daily basis? If you use the vernacular of the culture, turn on the TV and watch what's going on. And are you ready to make the shift into the higher law? Yes, there's work to be done. Many generations, many generations of hostility or fear in each of our bloodlines to be undone. But it is a work that can be done. Now, today, in this time frame, if you're listening to this, you're probably the early adopter in your family. You're probably the first one who stepped up and said, I'm ready to get rid of hostility and fear, and literally even the language of hostility or fear from my life. I'm ready to get rid of that. And I'm ready to move into a space where I function as a human being, as the active presence of love, to function out of the higher law. If you are the early adopter, it's going to take time. It's going to be a process. It's not going to happen overnight. But as you progress, you will notice that you get to spend more and more time in literally physiological serenity, in aliveness, and more of your language is based in present love rather than the game of hostility or fear. So this is a section that was written by Dan McDougald, and I'm just going to read it as he wrote it. The text of the Khaburis Codex delivers to us the words expressing the higher law across 20 centuries since he who fully understood it presented it to the apostles and embodied it, and embodied his practice of it in the resurrection. He said that all the higher law hangs on just 2 commandments. The first of the 2 commandments teaches us to, we're going to shift that word, because when the Greeks told us that we were supposed to love God, love neighbor as self, that was the first law. Actually, in Aramaic, the word that was used was Rakhma, present a filter in the frontal lobes of the brain that brings love into human form. So as opposed to love being a verb, love is a noun, it's a state of being. And so Rakhma allows us to be in that state of being when we think of the Creator. And so first of all, holding that space of Rakhma when you think of the Creator above all other objects and desire. First commandment. If this commandment is honored, we must sustain the integrity of that love under extreme pressure, as did Job, as did Yeshua in facing crucifixion. He maintained the presence of love so powerfully that he reached out and healed his enemy, the high priest's servant. We must sustain good character under all adverse conditions. So the idea here is that when you are able to maintain yourself, your experience of yourself as active present love, regardless of what's going on around you, then everything changes. So Yeshua maintained the presence of love so powerfully that he reached out and healed this enemy called the high priest servant. We must sustain this character, this state of being, under all adverse conditions. And that's a big practice if you come from generations and generations in a culture based in hostility and fear. And here's one of the most important thoughts that one could ever come across. He thought that this was the key to a sound mind. You want to keep a mind that truly functions properly, then here's how you do it. If it is honored in our lives by our government and other leaders, we can sustain a sound culture and reverse any declines which have occurred. So, take a look at the political situation today, the violence, the viciousness, the craziness, the language of hostility and fear that's become so all-pervasive. There is a way to restore sanity to that. And it's going to be enough people who understand who they are as love and speak from that space of being. Second commandment tells us again to maintain Rakhma, not love, but maintain Rakhma, which means when Rakhma is a filter in the frontal lobes of the brain that is a space that opens to bring human life, love, into human form. And so when you maintain yourself as love, when you think of neighbors, and in Aramaic, that means anyone you think about or have ever thought about, to have a sound mind, love must be the internal condition in our minds, in our marriages, in our families, our businesses, our streets, our schools, and homes. He teaches how to restore love. He teaches how to restore love. How do you do that? It's called forgiveness. The removal of hostility and fear. So the core of the work of Yeshua teaches how to restore love with forgiveness when it is lost to any form of hostility or fear. If this commandment is honored, our decisions and the resulting behaviors will match the standards established for humanity by the laws of living. And we've been hearing from some people who are interested in doing the Laws of Living intensive. Actually, last week, Jeannie played a show that was from, I think it was 2016, where we were talking about laws of living, and one gentleman who actually had been to Heartland, he actually was on the support team back about 10 years ago at Heartland, had been doing this work for 24, 25 years. We actually heard from him last week on the show, but he had listened to that recording and he didn't realize it was pre-recorded, and we were talking about a Laws of Living intensive. And he got his calendar out and he called me. He's like, Michael, what are the dates on this? I know I need to get to do this Laws of Living intensive again. When is it going to be? It's like, oh, excuse me, but Terry, that was a recording from a few years ago. So we have had some people who've been expressing interest in doing a Zoom online Laws of Living intensive. You know, we did the CoDependence to Interdependence intensive, and it's a recorded intensive now that's available for self-study. So thinking about scheduling a Laws of Living intensive would be done on Zoom so that once again it could be available as self-study, and then anyone who participated would have the whole intensive on video, as we do with the CoDependence to Interdependence intensive. So those results are summarized by Yeshua as the Golden Rule. From these and the other great truths presented in this volume, a course of healing and rehabilitation was developed for the enlightenment of modern humanity. It is entitled The Laws of Living, formerly Emotional Maturity Instruction, for it is through and by these laws that we can live in a serene communion with each other and, of course, with the Almighty, with the Creator. So it's when we're speaking of laws, and I've had people, when I talk about laws of living, say, well, would you send me a copy of them? No, there is no copy of the laws of living. Remember that law is not the rule of a superior. We don't write down rules that some superior force, called the Creator or the King, has said, here's what you have to do. That's not what laws of living are. In Aramaic, the word law means the way things work. So laws of living is about coming into a direct experience of the way the energy of life works. And as a result of that, as a result of clearing out the hostilities and fears of the generations, the power person dynamics and power person messages that have been given to us, one comes into a direct experience of how this energy system works and then functions from within it. The Foundation's first formal course, EMI, was prepared in late 1967 to heal, using the words of Yeshua, the ailing minds of hardcore felons in Georgia's maximum security prison. This was done at the request of Judge Asa D. Kelly, seeking to reduce the rate of return of criminals to the prison system. He was the director of the corrections system, the whole state of Georgia. And this man was one of my teachers and just the next thing to a saint. This is a man who put, in his tenure on the bench, thousands of people in prison, but never punished one of them. He recognized, and he would share with a felon who came before him, some heinous criminals, some heinous crimes. And they'd come before him, and he would explain that the community had taken up a collection and built a building with a set of bars around it to ensure the safety of and protect the community and the people in the community. And that they had asked him to determine who was safe in the community and who wasn't. Judge Kelly specifically requested that a course be created to free these people from the dynamics of their own family systems, cultural systems, the dynamics of their own criminal minds, to free themselves from it and to step back into harmony with the way human life works, which is what the word law means in Aramaic. Psychology tests, and actually there's a typo there, that should be the MMPI. Both before and after instruction were used to assess the impact of the word meanings rendered from the Aramaic on the minds of inmates. And so if you're familiar with it, the MMPI is Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. It's kind of the gold standard of psychological testing. Our personal code evaluation, which was developed way back in the social service agencies back decades ago, that evaluation we use to point people in the direction of where their opportunities for the greatest learning is, And so where their learning is going to be most effective. And then we give assignments for, here's specifically how to overcome these challenges in your mind. The evaluation breaks a person's personal code down into 10 areas: stress management, honor for self, honor for others, honor for truth, freedom from fear, freedom from hostility, honoring laws of living, nutrition, digestion, toxicity, stress management, will. And then there's a scale that measures the consistency or validity of one's answers. And depending on the profile where blockages are, once one takes the MMPI, and it's a precursor in all of our intensives, it is something that's available if someone wants to do it just in a general way to do their work, but is also part and parcel of each intensive. And so if somebody's interested in doing an evaluation, and then there are 2 videos that go with it, so you have an understanding of just exactly what that means. But the scoring in those 10 different areas gives us a profile where we can explain to someone how their mind skews their perception of life and how to get the mind back on track to support them in living truly as human beings. So this study and the correction of the word meanings in people's minds was used to assess where one stood, and this helped greatly to really tap into which renderings healed, which understandings healed, and which needed improvement. As new understandings from the Aramaic were acquired and tested, the course was rewritten at least every 2 years to incorporate validated improvements. Since 1967, almost 10,000 students have taken the courses prepared by the Foundation, which set forth the tools developed from the understanding of the words from the higher law from the Aramaic. In 15,000 pre, post, and progress evaluations employing recognized psychological test batteries that have been used by the Foundation to assess the effectiveness of the teaching. So in improving one's understanding of the higher law and the meanings of words which express it, this proved to be of great and lasting benefit in the lives of those who took the course. Surprisingly, the benefits increased as time passed after completion of the course, and of course, especially if one continued to do their work. The psychological tests indicated that a 37% return to prison was expected after the first course. The actual rate proved to be only 10% after 5 years of prison, in contrast to the normal return rate of 96% without EMI or laws of living. So we literally cut recidivism in the prison by 96%. Unfortunately, here's the down part of it. The course was quickly removed from the prison system by the state's political authorities when the obvious success of the program became apparent. The separation of, quote unquote, the separation of church and state was cited as the reason, but it begs the question. Had the course not been so successful and the prison's official jobs not have been threatened, as the success of the program certainly did, would EMI have been removed? As a result of the program being dropped, Director Kelly resigned and forced to return to the futile and antiquated procedures after finding a healing modality that actually worked to rehabilitate the criminal mind. No, what actually happened back then was that basically each jail, each sheriff's department, each prison gets a certain amount of money from the state or the federal government for each person that is incarcerated in that prison or that jail. And basically, where we were testing the laws of living, the jail population was pretty much eradicated. I mean, literally went down to next to zero, which meant the sheriff was out of business, and he got rid of the course. So Laws of Living EMI helps to restore fractured relationships, reduces criminality, delinquency, and substance abuse with an efficiency unmatched by other procedures. By 1973, the course was very effective at restoring love for all neighbors, including adversaries. So remember that we're not talking now about a verb when we're talking about love. We're talking about restoring presence of one's own human life in one's own mind and body, even, and as this mentions, adversaries, even in the presence of so-called enemies. This was the key. You know, if you ask the question, how do you maintain a sane mind in all circumstances? The answer would be maintain Rakhma for the Creator, for neighbor, and for self. And by so doing, you maintain your own human life. It was found in the Aramaic that the word neighbor includes all near to us, all in our minds or formerly in our minds, and includes even ourselves. There are no exceptions to the higher law that to function at our highest and best, we must have love as a permanent condition in the mind. Human life present in a human form transforms and changes everything. Without the active presence of love, without Rakhma, which again is the gateway, it's actually Rakhma is a dual, has a dual purpose. One, it is the gateway through which love, our created human essence, enters our forms. Two, it is a filter over intentions that allows only intentions that are keyed to love to be active in any given situation. And the reason that's important is because intentions are literally the raw material of goals. And goals are what drive the perceptions in our minds. And so when Yeshua said, have Rakhma for the Creator, for neighbor, for self, he was saying, maintain your human life in your own mind and body. And when we say, I love you, or I love myself, that's a reflection of a fundamental mistake and misunderstanding that we've been taught to make. When most people say the words, quote unquote, I love you, they're talking about a venial, fragile form of approval rather than the fact that love is our created essence, the state from which we're designed to experience life. Recapturing, this work is about recapturing, this is the higher law, recapturing the direct experience of yourself as love rather than the mental constructs fed to you by your genes, your family system, your culture, and the thought disorders accepted by your mind. And if that's not your normal state of being, then it takes a lifetime of work. It is not something that's going to happen in 5 minutes. If you choose to change the dynamic of your family system and of your culture's influence, it's going to be quite literally a lifetime of work. So love, we're understanding now from Laws of Living, is a state of being, not something you can get nor give to someone else. You can be the presence of love for someone, or they can be the presence of love for you, but the actual healing experience of love comes only when you awaken and experience that love is what you are. And, you know, people say, well, you know, it's so what? You know, I say I love you. Isn't that okay? Well, let's imagine that you go to a doctor and the doctor says, you know, you've got a problem with your epithelial cells. And there are 2 or 3 different kinds, and, you know, they're all kind of similar, so we'll just say, let's work on the squamous cell. That's an epithelial cell in the body. And you go to another doctor, and then the other doctor says, well, no, actually, it's in a deeper part of the cell. And you go, well, you know, it's all kind of the cells, so what's the difference? You know, it's 6 of one, half does the other. No, it's not 6 of one, half dozen the other. You either function as love, or you function as a false picture in your mind. And if you function as a false picture in your mind, and love is not part of that picture, then you don't have a human life. So these are subtle but important truths to understand and integrate. Love is not a behavior trait. It's not a behavior that you can engage in. It's not something you can get, do, or give, or get from somebody else. It is your created essence, your state of being. The bottom line of this work is to support you in experiencing every instant of your life out of the state of being the love that you are. And it's important to recognize you cannot love someone or self, because love is a noun, it's not a verb. Loving someone indicates that it's a verb, something you're doing as opposed to what you're being. If I tell my mind to be loving, it tries, with the experiences and many false beliefs that it's acquired through 1,000 generations, to guide me, be what my culture defines as loving. But you know how many came from a culture where they heard a parent saying things like, well, I'm only beating you because I love you. This hurts me more than it hurts you. No, what you're telling me, parent, if you say that to me, is that you're hurting and you're slashing out at me because you are not experiencing yourself as love. If one is functioning as something other than love, and thoughts of fear and hostility or disapproval are moving in me, when I say I love you, my goal to be loving will create conflict and guilt, because it's fear moving in me, it's hostility moving in me, and my language is going to be based in that. Though I said I'm supposed to, or I've been told I'm supposed to love you. What have you got now? This incorrect definition of love leaves us stuck in a conflicted situation. When I recognize that the goal of the work is to maintain the truth, the awareness of the truth of myself as love, when I can do that, what we call loving behavior will naturally flow from that. If I make love a verb, well, I'm supposed to be loving to you. I'm supposed to say certain words, but what's moving inside of me is rage. If I recognize that what's moving inside of me is rage, and I recognize that I've got forgiveness to do to remove the rage so I can return to the truth of who I am as love, then my behavior is going to be totally and completely different. But the goal to be loving, when something different is moving inside of me, if I've got a false definition of love, is going to leave me in conflict and guilt. When I recognize, and when I'm clear that my goal is to be the presence of love, if I'm in hostility, then I can direct my mind to do the work required to free myself of the hostility so that I can return to the truth of who I am as love. So it's a subtle but important conversation. And so I'm going to take a breath with that and just check in. We're about halfway through our time together. Miss Jeannie, just checking in to see if we've got anybody in the phone queue with a hand up, or anybody in the chat room with a thought for us. Or if you have any thoughts for us, sweetie.
We do have a hand up, and it's area code 404. I believe this is Chris. Welcome.
Hi, all.
Hey, welcome,
What is
Chris.
it?
Good to hear your voice.
Hi, Michael. What is it with the Greek? Is it the language that is, inferior and losing in translation, like you said? Is it the culture? I mean, we look to Greek civilization and history as, this icon of human achievement. Is it the language? Is it the people? Is it the culture? What's the problem?
Well, my offering would be this, that when you go back to the Aramaic language represents human life as love. And it deals with the actuality of the creation. When you go to the Greek language, you've got a language that's made up by human minds. And you've got a language, if you look at, say, the source of Greek thought, let's say if you look to the Aramaic, the creator that they honored was a creator called love. If you look at the so-called gods in the Greek pantheon, these were people who, they raped their own mothers, they controlled and destroyed people they didn't like. The craziness that's in that pantheon. And when that kind of hostility and fear becomes the source of language and the source of thinking, then the mind can only replay what's in it. In the Aramaic, the whole bottom line of the language is to remove those things based on hostility and fear, not to honor gods that, you look at what some of these gods did in the Greek pantheon, and it was just horrific. In Aramaic, if you go back purely to the Aramaic, then you've got a creator, a god called love, and humans that are made in the image and likeness of that love.
And so
and language language controls the way the perceptual mind works, and therefore the way we're guided to behave.
But so the Greek as compared to like Latin, Hebrew, English, is a special stumbling block as opposed to those other languages?
Well, the Aramaic language, if you look at the alphabet of the Aramaic language, the letters of the Aramaic alphabet are actually 3D shadows of the elements of creation. The Aramaic language is actually a reflection that comes out of the creation. If you look at every other language, it's a reflection of the minds that created the language. Humans made up a series of grunts and groans and called it words and said, this is what it means. And if you've got minds making up words that honor gods who slaughter their own children, torture their own spouses or parents, or, again, all the crazy stuff that goes on, then with language, you just gave permission to go into craziness. The Aramaic is taking people back, especially through Yeshua. The Aramaic is working to taking people back to experiencing themselves as the active presence of love, removing the dynamics of hostility or fear, not only from their minds, but from their emotions, their bodies, and their language, and being restored to the truth of who they are.
Okay, but how would you compare Greek with the Latin, the Hebrew, and the English, for example, or another language in its inability or ability to have the Aramaic meaning?
Well, if we look at, let me use an example, one of my favorites. In the Beatitudes, we're told by the Greeks, the Greek language, that the first word in each of the Beatitudes from the Aramaic, we're told that that word is, or the opening phrase in each of the Beatitudes is, blessed are they. So that's how the Greeks express it. The actual meaning of the word there is tuvehun in Aramaic. It's actually a three-part word, and it takes literally a whole paragraph for us to try to comprehend that in English. So tuvehun in if we were to go back to the Aramaic and we brought the Aramaic as close as we could into the English language, here's what that one word means from the Aramaic. A latent neural structure implanted in you by the Creator to guide you to happiness and well-being becomes your conscious possession, you who, and then the Beatitudes are a set of instructions for how to activate that neural structure. The Greeks told us it means blessed are they. And virtually every key idea from the Aramaic takes a paragraph to understand. And the Greek language just turns it all backward. You know, so many key words like forgiveness in Aramaic is a tool with which you go inside yourself and remove hostility or fear, pain, and trauma, the things that drive people to, let's say, to addiction. In the Aramaic language, that's what the word means. It's the tool you remove those things with, and you'll notice when they brought it into the Greek, now it becomes a thing where, well, of course, I get to blame you. You're the reason I'm in pain, so I'll let you off the hook for my pain. And now we've got what the world thinks is forgiveness, and it bears no resemblance to the Aramaic idea of forgiveness. We have, you know, we could go through dozens of different words. Law, which I've already talked about today, in the Aramaic, that word law represents the way the energy system of life works. If we look at the English language, what you and I have been brainwashed is, law is the rule of a superior and you better obey. Forgiveness, I'm going to let you off the hook. In Aramaic, forgiveness, I'm going to go inside myself and deal with and remove my pain.
Okay, so English is deficient. English is deficient also. I have
so far deficient.
I have one more question. The manuscript that manuscript that you found, what was it? That was
Khaboris.
Aramaic 11. What's it called again?
It's called the Khaboris manuscript. It's a 10th century copy of a 2nd century text. It comes from around 164 AD. So it's a copy of the oldest known New Testament in the Aramaic language.
Okay, is it all of the, I don't know that much about the Bible. I know there's the Old Testament and the New Testament. Is it all of the books in both Old and New Testaments, or just partial, or what? No.
The Khaboris manuscript is all of the Eastern canon of the New Testament. So it specifically is limited to the New Testament and is the Eastern canon. So there are a few books like Revelations and such that were added in by the Greeks that are not in the Eastern canon. The Western Church, the Roman Church, took on some books that the Eastern Church did not engage in. So it's the whole New Testament as accepted by the Eastern Church.
And when was this discovered?
This manuscript,
in archaeology.
Well, actually, the manuscript itself, my former partner, Dan McDougald, who's the gentleman who originated the work that we were talking about in the prisons, EMI, that eventually when we met and discovered we'd been traveling similar paths and put our work together and created Laws of Living, Dan actually funded and did an expedition back in the 60s to the Middle East to find a complete, as complete and as old a New Testament Aramaic text as he could. And that's when the manuscript was found. It's called the Khaboris because it was found in a monastery on the Khyber River in Turkey.
And now it is being kept. And now it's being kept safely somewhere. It's in a museum.
Now it's kept safely somewhere. If you want to look through the whole manuscript, and the pages are, especially the markings, there are many markings that are in red, and when you look at it, it's really beautiful. If you go to our website, whyagain.org/Khaboris, Khaburis, I'll send you a link to it. if you go to that, you can look through the whole manuscript. There's the story about, actually, I traveled with it for about a year when we were getting high-resolution images being made of the manuscript. And so at one point I took it to Heartland, and there's a story and some pictures of when we had it at Heartland and kind of some of the things that we did with it. So and we've got a copy of, it's not the high-res images, but we've got a copy of every page of the manuscript. It's 512 or 513 pages, and that's all on our website. So you can look through the manuscript itself.
All right, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Delighted. Delighted. Does that all fit? Any other thoughts for you?
Oh, probably, but I'll...
Well, let's go for it. We're here. You know, we've been trying to connect. We've been going back and forth for a while. So if you have any other thoughts or questions or any way we can support you, we're here to do it.
Well, you know...
And or as you go through the course material that you're going through, you know, keep note of any questions that you've got, and then call the show, and the gift of your questions, we can get to share the answers to it with everybody.
Yes, I'll have some more questions in the future. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, sir. Have a blessed one. Good to talk with you.
Yep.
All right. Take care. Hardy. Bye-bye. Sweet. Well, Ms. Cheney, we've got about 10 minutes left. Anything else happening in the chat room or anybody else in the phone queue with a hand up?
There is another hand up, and I believe that it is Terry Bowling, 336. You're on the air.
Well, Mr. Terry,
hey,
how are you, young man? Welcome.
I'm doing pretty good, yeah. So that fellow that was just on the show is, was his name Tim? Maybe? No, what was his name?
You're talking that just called in now, Chris.
Yeah,
Chris,
yeah.
yes.
Chris, yeah. Did I hear him say he was in the middle of going through the course now, one of the lessons?
He's now doing the CoDependence to Interdependence Self-Study, yes.
Oh, okay, great. And I thought maybe he might be actually going through the Laws of Living course, but he's doing the CoDependence course.
He's doing the CoDependence, the one that you've been doing. Yep.
Yes. Okay. Well,
have you completed going through the laws of, or the CoDependence to Interdependence, by the way?
No. And it might be a good idea if I had somebody to connect with like him and just bounce off a few things back and forth. I would certainly be open to that if he wanted someone to chat with once in a while.
Okay. Well, I will pass his number on to you, and
yeah.
And if he wants to contact you, he can do that.
Yeah.
Other than that, what's exciting in your world?
Oh, just assimilating, digesting information, and filtering through just enjoying the vastness and the qualities of what's available to us, and all the things that people are able to talk about and discuss in this free world, I guess, that we're in. And particularly, and so I probably sent you a few of them, the fellow Philip Hoffman, who was a consciousness studying guy. I forget his exact title, but he has a bend toward psychology and physics and math, and he had what I would call a full-blown God experience, for lack of better words, and when he was working out mathematically, trying to prove if there was consciousness or not, or how consciousness worked, or some aspect of it, and he came across this idea, the thought, and he said it was scientifically based. I think I'm sure I've shared it with you. I might share it with you afresh. And you don't have quite as much time as I do, because whenever I'm in the truck, I'm listening, to something.
Right.
Somewhere.
I hear you.
And of course, whenever I land, all that stops. But it was a fresh idea about, or maybe it wasn't such a fresh idea, but it was a different perspective, a different use of words about consciousness and how we are. They're using a lot of computer terms, which to me goes right along with the why game, because you certainly use a lot of computer analogies to describe the operations of the mind and this, that, and the other. But I've tried to find at least a little 5 minutes where he has that experience when it was like he proved that there was God or something like that mathematically. Yeah, it was like this big, oh, wow moment. And that he could see that each of us, the language he used, that we're an interface, that we're a point of consciousness, and it's like we're an interface, and that we're able to create additional interfaces through our children. Now, he's much more eloquent, and I don't even begin to have the words to express it the way he did, but I know you would get it really quickly. And I would like to hear your interpretation of what was going on with him. And
yeah, send me a link.
If you had
to hear
time.
it. See what he's doing.
Yeah, it wouldn't take you more than 15 minutes. It'll take me longer to kind of figure out exactly where he was in that segment where he started talking about that, so that you can dial into it, because I think the show is like 2.5 hours long. I'll try to dial it down to within a little window.
Okay.
It says,
cool.
I know you guys stay busy on all the work you got going on, but in his meditations, he was talking about part of the shift was when he was focusing on what was behind, He says when you're meditating, he said, I would look and there's like this gray or dark kind of matter area. But when he started meditating, looking inwards or beyond through his portal, was also a part of that opening. So this stuff is really challenging to put into words that we can convey, because the words they rarely convey and express the experience that we have that can be so beautiful and rich, just the full-blown life experience there. But he was doing a good job of expressing it, and it really got me interested. It motivated me to work a little harder on some of my explorations and the meditations and all, and pull the worksheets back to the top of the stack. You know what I mean? Like, all right, let's interface with a worksheet. Let's look at this interface point with this worksheet tool that we've got here. So that's what's going on. Buddy.
Right. Well, you've heard me say 1,000 times that in order to heal, you've got to be out of your mind. And last weekend I went to a workshop of a gentleman who wrote the textbooks on a thing called medical massage. And I went because there's a person here I've been working with who, I've over the 50 years, I started doing massage work with massage therapists 50 years ago, and in that intervening years, I've worked with massage therapists on literally on 4 continents, and never found anybody who could do what this person could do. And her teacher was coming, actually was in North Carolina. I talked to you about, when I was heading down there, and so I went just to be in the presence of him as a master. And one of the things that unfolded for me, the opening day was a total day of theory, was just a lecture on theory. And I'm sitting in there, and I just had this experience of kind of being able to step back and be out of my own mind, and to see how this whole energetic system, and in particular, this energy field that we call a body-mind unit, was really just a place for us to start to bring in the expression of the magnificence of who and what is really behind it all, and who and what we are. And it was just like, you know, this moment where I kind of was able to step back from my own mind, and I could just see how this whole energetic expression was organized by our will, and it was there for that expression. And the mind is such a minuscule part of it that the mind, you know, the mind tries and wants to understand, but the experience is so magnificent, so huge, that it's like trying to put an 8-foot 2x4 in the 8 inches between your ears. It just doesn't fit. And to me, the objective of this work is to deliver us the tools with which we can be out of our minds and have that experience. And then, of course, you come back and you try to explain it to your mind, and your mind goes, oh, man, I got to water this down so much.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like Yeshua said 2,000 years ago, and they said, well, tell us, tell us, tell us. And he says, I have so many things I would tell you, but you can't hear them yet. And it's all, you know, this work is about building the brain cells to come to that direct experience, not for the mind to hear about it. I mean, people read about it in books and go, oh, isn't that cool? But the real difference is to have the experience of it. And that's what corrects everything that's insane in the world, is that experience. And to me, that's what these tools are about. That's what I've been working on developing these tools for the last half century. So delighted to be sharing them with you, my friend.
Me too. Very much so.
All right, well, the show's going to cut us off. We've gone a little bit over time. It's kind of yelling in my ear, so I'm going to just invite everybody to have the best year yet of your eternal life. Chris, good to hear from you. Glad you had some questions, and look forward to your inquiry and what your next questions are. And the same for you, Terry. Appreciate you a lot. Blessings. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Bye-bye.